His fingers closed around her ponytail like she was nothing, like she was prey. Corporal Tyler Reeves yanked hard, jerking Maya Chen's head backward, his beer breath hot against her ear. "Sit down, little girl. We're not done with you." What happened next took 2.3 seconds. The 210-pound Marine hit the floor before anyone saw her move. And when Maya Chen looked up, her eyes held something that made every man in that room stop breathing. She was 19 years old. She was the deadliest sniper the Navy had ever produced, and she had just begun. Before we continue, if you love stories about underestimated women who fight back, subscribe to our channel and stay until the end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The bullet left her rifle at 2,800 feet per second. Maya Chen watched through her scope as it traveled 200 meters across the Sana'a skyline, threading through a 4-inch gap between a crumbling window frame and a rusted air conditioning unit passing within 3 inches of a sobbing American hostage's left temple. The terrorist's head snapped backward. His finger convulsed on the trigger. And somewhere in that fraction of a second between life and death, a 24-year-old nurse named Rachel Morrison caught a fragment of ricocheting metal through her throat. Maya was 18 years old when she learned that saving lives and taking them could happen in the same heartbeat. "Target down," she whispered into her comm, her voice steady even as her soul began to crack. 2 hostages secured. One civilian casualty. Behind her, Staff Sergeant Derek Morrison call sign. Hawk lowered his spotting scope. His voice was gentle, the way a father's voice might be when telling a child that some wounds never fully heal. "You saved 2 people today, Ghost Eye." "I killed one." "The terrorist killed her. You ended him before he could kill the other 2. Maya pulled back from her rifle, her hands steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. She was 18. She had just made the most impossible shot of her career. She had just become a hero. She had never felt more like a monster. "Rachel Morrison," she said quietly. That was her name. I read her file. She was a nurse, volunteered for humanitarian work, had a fiancé waiting back in Ohio. Hawk didn't say anything. He'd been in this business long enough to know that some silences were more honest than any words could be. "Will it always feel like this?" Maya asked. "No." Hawk began packing their gear with the methodical precision of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. "Sometimes it feels worse." 3 weeks later, Derek Morrison was dead. The intelligence package had come from Marine Scout Sniper Platoon 3rd Battalion. Maya remembered reading it, remembered the confidence in the assessment. Single target, minimal security, clean extraction. The intelligence was wrong. Hawk died in a doorway in northern Syria, his body torn apart by automatic fire from hostiles who weren't supposed to exist. 8 men became 16. A routine extraction became a massacre. And somewhere in a headquarters building thousands of miles away, Marine intelligence officers shrugged and called it actionable intelligence limitations. Maya didn't cry at his memorial. She couldn't. The tears had frozen somewhere deep inside her, crystallized into something harder and colder and infinitely more dangerous. She made a promise that day, standing before Hawk's flag-draped casket. She would find out who failed him. She would expose the rot that had killed him, and she would burn it to the ground. 8 months later, Maya Chen walked through the gates of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, wearing jeans and a faded hoodie, her auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She carried a backpack that looked like it belonged to a college freshman. She moved with the easy confidence of someone visiting their boyfriend on base. No one gave her a second look. That was exactly what she wanted. Her orders were classified at levels that would make most officers' security clearances look like library cards. Officially, she was conducting a routine assessment of inter-service cooperation protocols. Unofficially, she was here to determine whether the 3rd Scout Sniper Platoon, the unit whose intelligence failures had contributed to Hawk's death, deserved to continue existing. The power to recommend disbandment sat in her back pocket, signed by an admiral who owed her favors she would never discuss. Maya found the recreation center at 1930 hours. The building hummed with the particular energy of men who believed they owned every space they occupied. Laughter, shouting, the crack of pool balls, the clink of beer bottles being set down too hard. She pushed through the door and felt 40 pairs of eyes track her movement like wolves noticing a deer that had wandered too close to the pack. Perfect. She chose a corner booth with her back to the wall. Clear sight lines to all 3 exits. Unobstructed view of the entire room. Old habits from a life spent in places where complacency meant death. Her phone came out. To anyone watching, she looked like a bored girlfriend scrolling through Instagram. In reality, she was documenting everything. Faces, ranks, group dynamics, the subtle hierarchies that revealed who really held power in this room. Staff Sergeant Connor Briggs noticed her within 30 seconds. Maya had read his file on the flight in. 32 years old, 14 years in the Corps, 3 combat deployments, consistently high performance ratings paired with consistently concerning command climate surveys. The kind of man who confused intimidation with leadership and mistook fear for respect. He was also directly responsible for the intelligence assessment that had killed Hawk. Briggs murmured something to the men around him. Laughter rippled outward like poison spreading through water. Maya didn't look up. She kept her attention on her phone, her fingers moving across the screen with practiced indifference. Let them come. Let them reveal themselves. Well, well. The voice was close now, maybe 10 feet away. Looks like someone got lost on their way to the sorority house. More laughter. Maya continued scrolling. Hey, sweetheart. Closer now. She could smell cheap beer and cheaper cologne. I'm talking to you. Maya looked up. Staff Sergeant Connor Briggs stood over her table, with the posture of a man who'd never been told no by anyone he couldn't physically intimidate. Behind him, 3 Marines formed a loose semicircle. Corporal Tyler Reeves, Lance Corporal Danny Vance, and PFC Marcus Webb. She'd read all their files, too. Reeves was the enforcer-failed MARSOC selection twice channeled his inadequacy into aggression. Vance was the follower desperate for acceptance, willing to cross any line if it meant belonging. Webb was the youngest uncomfortable but silent, the kind of good kid who'd go along with bad things because he didn't know how to stand alone. Can I help you? Maya's voice was flat. Unimpressed. Briggs's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind his eyes. People didn't usually respond to him with boredom. This is a military facility, sweetheart. Marines only. You lost or something? I'm exactly where I need to be. Is that right? Briggs pulled out the chair across from her and sat down uninvited. His Marines closed ranks around the booth, cutting off her exits. See, I think maybe you wandered in here looking for some jarhead boyfriend who's probably smart enough to stay away. And now you're in a room full of men who don't appreciate uninvited guests. Maya set her phone down. Her eyes met his with the kind of level stare that had made insurgent leaders reconsider their life choices. Uninvited? She let the word hang. Last I checked, this recreation center was open to all authorized personnel. When did it become your personal kingdom, Staff Sergeant? The use of his rank landed like a slap. Briggs's jaw tightened. The men around him exchanged glances. You know who I am. I know a lot of things. Then you know you don't want to play games with me, little girl. Briggs leaned forward, using his size as a weapon. I've broken harder people than you before breakfast. Maya's smile was winter. No, you really haven't. The tension in the booth stretched like a wire about to snap. Briggs' face had gone red above his collar. Behind him, Reeves was practically vibrating with barely contained aggression, waiting for permission to act. You've got a mouth on you, Briggs said slowly. Someone should teach you some manners. Someone tried once. Maya's voice was soft, almost gentle. He walked with a limp for 6 months. Laughter exploded from a nearby table Marines who'd been eavesdropping on the confrontation. The sound hit Briggs like a physical blow. His authority was being challenged, his dominance was being questioned, and it was happening in front of his own men. He couldn't let that stand. Reeves. The name came out flat and hard. Sarge, our guest here needs to understand how things work on this base. Help her find the door. Reeves moved with the eager violence of a man who'd been waiting for exactly this kind of permission. He circled behind Maya's booth, positioning himself at her back, where she couldn't see him. Classic intimidation tactic. Surround the target. Cut off escape routes. Use superior numbers to establish dominance. It might have worked on a civilian. Ma'am, Reeves's voice was mock polite. I think it's time you left. Maya didn't turn around. I think I'll finish my drink first. That wasn't a request. Neither is this take 3 steps backward and keep your hands where I can see them. Reeves laughed. It was an ugly sound full of entitlement and cruelty. Listen, sweetheart. Don't call me sweetheart. I'll call you whatever I want. His hand reached for her shoulder. Touch me, and I'll break your arm. The warning was delivered with such calm certainty that Reeves actually hesitated. But his ego was bigger than his survival instinct. His fingers closed around her shoulder with bruising force. How about now, sweet? Maya moved. Her hand came up, captured his wrist, and applied a joint lock that turned his own grip into a lever against his elbow. Reeves gasped as his arm hyperextended, pain shooting through his nervous system like electricity. I warned you, Maya said, her voice still conversational. Let go of me, you crazy. She increased the pressure. Reeves dropped to one knee, his face contorting with agony. The human elbow, Maya continued as if she were giving a classroom lecture, is a hinge joint, very strong in one direction, very vulnerable in others. Right now, I'm applying approximately 40 pounds of pressure to yours. At 60 pounds, the joint dislocates. At 80, the ligaments tear. Would you like me to demonstrate? No. Reeves's voice cracked. No, Jesus, let go. Maya released him. Reeves scrambled backward, cradling his arm against his chest, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. The recreation center had gone silent. 40 Marines stared at the impossible scene before them. A girl who looked like a college student had just put their unit's toughest enforcer on his knees without breaking a sweat. Briggs' face had gone pale, then red, then purple. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. You just assaulted a Marine, he said, his voice shaking with barely contained fury. Your Marine grabbed me without permission. That's assault. I extracted myself using minimum necessary force. That's self-defense. Maya picked up her phone and resumed scrolling. Section 4 of the UCMJ. I can cite the specific statute if you need help understanding. I don't give a damn about statutes. Briggs was on his feet now, looming over her with all the physical presence he could muster. You think you can walk into my house, embarrass my men, and walk out like nothing happened? Maya looked up at him. Her eyes were absolutely cold. Your house? She tilted her head slightly. Interesting. Tell me, Staff Sergeant, do you always refer to military facilities as your personal property? Does command know about your... territorial interpretation of government resources. The question was a trap beautifully constructed. If Briggs backed down, he'd look weak in front of his men. If he escalated, he'd be confirming exactly the kind of command climate issues that Maya's assessment was designed to uncover. He chose escalation. "Get up." His voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "No." "I said get up." He reached for her arm. "I said no." His hand closed around her wrist. It was a mistake. Maya flowed out of the booth like water taking the shape of violence. Her free hand struck the nerve cluster at his elbow. Her body rotated, redirecting his weight along vectors he couldn't control. And suddenly, Staff Sergeant Connor Briggs, 14 years in the Corps, 3 combat deployments master of every physical confrontation he'd ever been in, found himself bent backward over the table with a teenage girl's forearm pressed against his throat. "Here's what's going to happen," Maya said, her voice clear and calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "You're going to stop grabbing people without their permission. You're going to stop treating this facility like your personal kingdom. And you're going to start thinking very carefully about the consequences of underestimating people based on what they look like." "Who the hell are you?" Briggs choked out. Maya smiled. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting 8 months for this exact moment. "I'm Sergeant First Class Maya Chen, Naval Special Warfare Command, codename Ghost Eye." She paused, letting the sniper designation sink in. "And for the next 72 hours I own you." She released him. Briggs stumbled backward, gasping his hand going to his throat. Around the room, Marines were pulling out phones, recording texting, spreading word of the impossible thing they'd just witnessed. Maya pulled a slim leather wallet from her back pocket. She opened it with deliberate precision, revealing military identification with classification markings that made their security clearances look like library cards. "I've been on this base for 6 hours," she said. "In that time, I've documented 17 security protocol violations, observed multiple instances of hostile command climate, and now have video evidence of 2 Marines assaulting a superior officer." She gestured at all the phones that had been recording. "Thanks for the documentation, gentlemen." Briggs' face had gone the color of old ash. "Commander, ma'am, I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem, Staff Sergeant." Maya gathered her things with practiced efficiency. "You didn't know. You didn't ask. You didn't verify. You saw a young woman alone in your territory, and you assumed she was prey." She walked toward the door, then paused. "That kind of assumption got 47 people killed last year, including my mentor." She turned back to face them. "His name was Derek Morrison, callsign Hawk. He died in Syria because of faulty intelligence from a Marine unit that was too arrogant to verify their assessments." The room had gone completely still. "Your unit, Staff Sergeant." Maya's voice was quiet now, but it carried to every corner of the space. "Your intelligence. Your failure." Briggs looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. We didn't. You didn't know. You didn't check. You didn't care." Maya opened the door. "Tomorrow morning, 0500 hours, Training Facility Bravo. You're going to have one chance to prove that you're capable of learning from your failures. If you can't..." She shrugged. "I have the authority to recommend this unit for immediate disbandment. You can't do that." "Read my orders." She tossed the leather wallet onto the nearest table. "Then tell me what I can't do." The door closed behind her. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Briggs snatched up the wallet and began reading. His face went through a transformation that would have been comical if the implications weren't so catastrophic. "What does it say, Sarge?" Vance's voice was barely above a whisper. Briggs didn't answer. He just kept reading, his hands trembling slightly as the full scope of their situation became clear. She was real. Her authority was real. And tomorrow morning, everything they thought they knew about themselves was going to be tested against genuine special operations standards. "Get everybody together," Briggs finally said, his voice hollow. "Now, we need to talk about what just happened. And we need to figure out how we're going to survive the next 72 hours. Outside, Maya Chen walked through the darkness toward her quarters. The night air was cool against her skin, carrying the scent of pine and distant ocean. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number from memory. "Admiral, it's Ghost Eye. Initial assessment complete." She paused, listening. "Yes, sir. Worse than expected, but there might be something worth saving. I'll know more after tomorrow." She ended the call and looked up at the stars. "I'm here, Hawk," she whispered. "And this time, the people who failed you are going to learn what failure really costs." Somewhere in the recreation center, 40 Marines were confronting the possibility that their careers might end because they'd underestimated a 19-year-old girl in a hoodie. They had no idea that the real test hadn't even begun. The door hadn't closed behind Maya for 30 seconds before Briggs's fist slammed into the wall hard enough to split his knuckles. "How?" His voice came out raw, broken. "How the hell did we not know?" Nobody answered. The recreation center felt like a crime scene. Now 40 men standing in the wreckage of their assumptions, trying to understand how completely they'd miscalculated. Reeves was still cradling his arm against his chest. His face had gone gray, the bravado stripped away like paint peeling off rusted metal. "She's 19, Sarge. 19. How does a 19-year-old kid become a SEAL sniper?" "She's not a kid." Vance's voice was barely audible. He'd pulled up something on his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's blue glow. "Ghost Eye. I found her. Jesus Christ, I found her." "What does it say?" Vance's hands were shaking. "Youngest female sniper in naval special warfare history, recruited at 17 from competitive shooting championships, confirmed kills at distances exceeding 1,200 meters, primary operator on Operation Crimson Tide, Operation Neptune's Wrath operation." "Stop." Briggs held up his hand. "Just stop." The silence that followed was suffocating. PFC. Marcus Webb spoke for the first time. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. "Sarge, she said something about her mentor. Morrison. Derek Morrison." Briggs's face changed. Something flickered behind his eyes that looked almost like recognition. "What?" Reeves demanded. "What is it? Syria?" The word came out like a confession. 8 months ago. Joint operation. SEAL fire team got ambushed during extraction." Briggs ran his hand over his face. "Intelligence assessment came from our unit." "Our unit? My assessment." Briggs's voice cracked. "I signed off on it. Single target, minimal security. That's what our sources said. That's what I reported." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "How many casualties?" Webb asked. 3 SEALs dead, 8 Marines wounded." Briggs stared at his bleeding knuckles like he'd never seen his own hands before. "I wrote the after-action review myself. Called it Intelligence Limitations Under Operational Constraints. Made it sound like nobody's fault." "It wasn't your fault," Reeves said quickly. "Intel goes bad all the time. That's combat." "Is it?" Briggs looked up, and for the first time, his men saw something they'd never seen in his eyes before. Doubt. Or did I just tell myself that because it was easier than admitting I was sloppy? Nobody had an answer. The phone in Briggs' hand buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Training Facility Bravo. 0500. Your entire platoon. No exceptions. Bring your best shooter. Ghost Eye. He stared at the message for a long moment, then looked at his men. Get everybody to the briefing room. Now. We've got 8 hours to figure out how to survive this." The briefing room filled quickly. Word had spread through the battalion like wildfire. The teenage girl who'd dropped Reeves and humiliated Briggs was a SEAL sniper with authority to shut them down. Marines who hadn't been in the recreation center arrived with disbelief on their faces. Marines who had been there arrived with something worse, the hollow expression of men who'd seen their own futures evaporate. Briggs stood at the front of the room, his injured hand wrapped in a field bandage. 40 faces stared back at him, waiting for leadership he wasn't sure he could provide. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," he began. "We stepped in it. Bad. That woman isn't some Pentagon bureaucrat we can bury in paperwork. She's Tier 1. She's got more combat experience than most of us combined, and she's here specifically because of something I did." Murmurs rippled through the room. "8 months ago, I signed off on intelligence that got 3 SEALs killed." The words tasted like poison in his mouth. "One of them was her mentor. She's not here to evaluate us. She's here to destroy us. And based on what happened tonight, she's got more than enough ammunition to do it." Sergeant Jake Mercer, callsign Deadshot, raised his hand. "So what's the play, Sarge? We just roll over and let some teenager end our careers?" "No." Briggs straightened, some of the old steel returning to his spine. "We fight. Not like tonight that was stupid. We fight smart. We show her that whatever mistakes we've made, this unit is worth saving." "How?" "She wants a competition tomorrow. Sniper against sniper. Jake, that's you. You're the best shooter we've got. If anyone can match her, it's you." Mercer nodded slowly. "What's her range?" According to what Vance found, her longest confirmed kill is 1,400 meters. The room went silent. 1,400 meters was theoretical range, competition range. Nobody actually made shots like that in combat. "That's impossible," someone said from the back. "She did it in Syria, through a 4-inch window gap, with 2 hostages in the way." The silence deepened. "Then I'll need to practice." Mercer stood up, his jaw set. "Get me the range, all night if I have to." "What about the rest of us?" Webb asked. Briggs looked at his youngest Marine. The kid looked terrified, but he was still here, still asking how to help. That had to count for something. "Study. Everything. Protocols, procedures, regulations. She's going to test us on things we should already know, things we've been too arrogant to remember." He paused. "And for God's sake, nobody touch her again. You understand, she's not the enemy. We are. We've been our own worst enemy for years, and she's just holding up a mirror." The briefing broke up at 2300 hours. Most of the Marines headed to study areas or the range, but Briggs went somewhere else. The base memorial wall stood in a quiet corner of the main compound, names etched in bronze, lives reduced to letters and dates. Briggs had walked past it 1,000 times without stopping. Tonight, he stopped. His fingers found the name without searching: Sergeant Derek Morrison. SEAL Team 5, KIA, Syria. "I didn't know." His voice was a whisper. "I swear to God, I didn't know the intel was bad. I thought I was doing my job." The bronze didn't answer. It never did. "Your girl is going to end me tomorrow. And maybe she should. Maybe I deserve it." Briggs traced the letters of Hawk's name. "But my men don't. They followed my lead because that's what Marines do. If someone has to pay for what happened to you, it should be me. Just me. It should be the culture that created you." Briggs spun around. Maya Chen stood 10 feet away, her face half-shadowed by the memorial's overhead light. She'd changed out of her casual clothes into Navy working uniform, her rank insignia visible now. She looked older, somehow. Harder. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough." She walked forward until she was beside him, looking at the same names. You think apologies matter to dead men, Staff Sergeant? No, ma'am. Then why are you here? Briggs didn't have an answer. Or maybe he had too many answers and couldn't sort them into words. I watched the briefing, Maya said. Cameras in the ceiling. Standard security measure on classified facilities. So you heard everything? Everything. She turned to face him. You told them the truth. You took responsibility. That's more than I expected. It doesn't change what happened. No, it doesn't. Maya's eyes drifted back to Hawk's name. He was the only person who believed in me when I was 17 years old. Everyone else saw a freak, a kid who could shoot but couldn't possibly understand real combat. Hawk saw a soldier. He made me one. I'm sorry. Are you? Or are you sorry because you got caught? The question hung between them like a blade. Both, Briggs admitted. I'm sorry for what happened to him. I'm sorry for how we treated you tonight. And yeah, I'm sorry because my career is probably over and my men are going to suffer for my mistakes. Maya studied him for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. Tomorrow's evaluation has 2 parts, she finally said. The first is a sniper competition, your man against me. That's for show something your Marines can watch something to establish baseline competence. And the second part, that's the real test. Maya's voice hardened. After the shooting, I'm going to disappear into your training facility. Your entire platoon will have 2 hours to locate, fix, and capture me. If you succeed, I'll recommend this unit for continued operation with mandatory retraining. If you fail... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. How are we supposed to capture a SEAL sniper in her own element? You're not. Maya's smile was cold. But the attempt will tell me everything I need to know about whether this unit has any capacity for growth. Whether you can adapt. Whether you can learn. She paused. Whether Hawk's death meant anything at all. She turned and walked away. Commander, Briggs's voice stopped her. For what it's worth, my shooter Mercer, he's good. Maybe the best I've ever trained. I know. Maya didn't turn around. I read his file too. Consistent scores at 800 meters. Strong fundamentals. Excellent wind reading. You don't sound impressed. 800 meters is qualification range, Staff Sergeant. Where I come from, that's warm-up. She paused at the edge of the memorial. Tell Mercer to get some sleep. He's going to need it. Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness like she'd never been there at all. Briggs stood alone with the dead for a long time after that. 100 hours came too fast. The training facility was already occupied when Bravo platoon arrived. Colonel James Davis, the battalion commander. Major Patricia Vance. And most terrifyingly, Brigadier General Victor Stone, a living legend who'd fought in conflicts most of them had only read about. But it was Maya who commanded everyone's attention. She stood at the firing line in full combat gear, her SR-25 rifle resting against her hip, with the casual familiarity of an extension of her own body. She looked completely relaxed, completely confident, completely terrifying. Gentlemen, General Stone's voice carried across the field. You are about to participate in a practical evaluation designed to assess this unit's operational readiness. Commander Chen has designed a 2-phase test. The first phase is a shooting competition. The second phase is a tactical exercise. He paused, letting the weight of his rank settle over them. I want to be clear about something. This evaluation is not ceremonial. The results will determine whether 3rd Scout Sniper Platoon continues to exist as a functional unit. Your performance today matters. Your attitudes matter more. Colonel Davis stepped forward. Sergeant Mercer, you'll be representing the platoon in Phase 1. Standard qualification course followed by extended range demonstration. Commander Chen will shoot first to establish baseline. Maya moved to the firing line without fanfare. Her movements were economical, precise, no wasted motion, no showmanship. She settled behind her rifle like she was coming home. Targets are set at 400, 600, and 800 meters, Davis announced. Standard Marine qualification, 10 rounds per distance. Commander Chen, you may begin when ready. Maya's first shot was perfect. So was her second. And her third. By the time she finished the 800-meter set, she hadn't missed once. 30 rounds, 30 hits, dead center, every single one. The Marines watched in silence. Mercer's face had gone pale. Qualification complete, Davis announced. Perfect score. Commander Chen, do you wish to proceed to extended range? Maya stood up from her rifle and looked directly at Briggs. With the Colonel's permission, I'd like to modify the extended range demonstration. How so? Instead of preset targets, I'd like to engage at ranges of my choosing. 1,000 meters? 1,200 meters? 1,400 meters? She paused. I want your men to understand exactly what they're dealing with. Davis looked at Stone. The general nodded. Proceed. Maya settled back behind her rifle. 1,000 meters away, a steel target the size of a human torso waited. She took one breath, held it, squeezed. The clang of impact reached them a full second after the shot. Dead center. 1,200 meters. Same result. The 1,400-meter target was smaller, maybe 12 inches across. At that distance, it was barely visible to the naked eye. Wind gusted across the range in unpredictable patterns. Heat shimmer distorted everything. Maya didn't move for 30 seconds. She was reading the wind, calculating, adjusting for variables that most shooters couldn't even perceive. Then she fired. The clang was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, dead center. 40 Marines stood in stunned silence. What they'd just witnessed wasn't supposed to be possible. It violated everything they understood about the limitations of rifle fire. That's impossible, someone whispered. That's absolutely impossible. Maya stood up and stepped back from her rifle. Your turn, Sergeant Mercer. Mercer walked to the line like a man approaching his own execution. His hands were steady years of discipline ensured that, but his eyes told a different story. He'd just watched a 19-year-old do things he'd been told were theoretical. His qualification round was excellent. Not perfect 3 shots at 800 meters drifted slightly right, but excellent. 27 out of 30. Any other day he'd have been proud. Today, it felt like failure. Extended range, Davis asked. Mercer nodded. He had to try. His unit's survival depended on it. The 1,000-meter shot landed. Slightly off-center, but a hit. 1,200 meters. He took his time, read the wind, adjusted, fired. The target didn't ring. He tried again. Miss. Again. Miss. That's enough. General Stone's voice was gentle, almost kind. Stand down, Sergeant. Mercer stepped back from his rifle. His face was blank, but his hands were shaking. Maya approached him. For a moment, Briggs tensed, expecting mockery. Instead, Maya's voice was quiet, almost respectful. You're a good shooter. Better than 90% of Marines I've seen. Your fundamentals are solid. Your wind reading is competent. But you've never been pushed past your limits. You've trained to meet standards, not exceed them. That's not your fault, that's how you were taught. She looked at Briggs. That's how they were all taught, and that's the problem I'm here to fix. She turned to address the assembled Marines. Phase 1 is complete. You've seen what Tier 1 capability looks like. Now comes the real test. Her voice carried across the field. In 15 minutes, I will enter your training facility. You will have 2 hours to locate, fix, and capture me. 40 men against 1. Those don't sound like fair odds, Reeves muttered. Maya's smile was winter. You're right. They're not. You should probably ask for more men. She checked her watch. 15 minutes, gentlemen. I suggest you use them wisely. Then she walked toward the training facility, disappearing into the complex, like a ghost returning to haunt the living. Briggs gathered his men into a tight circle. Listen up. Everything we've done before, every exercise, every drill, every operation, forget it. She's not going to behave like any enemy we've trained against. She's going to exploit every assumption, every habit, every weakness. So what do? Webb asked. We adapt. Briggs looked at his youngest Marine. You're going to be our wild card. While the rest of us run standard search patterns, I want you thinking differently. Ask yourself, where would she never expect us to look? What would she never expect us to do? Why me? Because you're the only one here who doesn't have 10 years of bad habits to unlearn. Briggs put his hand on Webb's shoulder. Today, that might be our biggest advantage. The timer started, and somewhere in the training facility, Maya Chen began hunting the hunters. The first 15 minutes were silent. 40 Marines spread across the training facility in textbook formation, covering sectors, maintaining communication, following every protocol they'd ever been taught. Their radio discipline was perfect. Their movement patterns were professional. Their confidence was absolute. They had no idea they were already losing. Alpha Team in position Sector 1 clear, Reeves reported. Bravo Team holding Sector 2, no contact. Charlie Team sweeping Sector 3, nothing. Briggs listened to the reports from his command post and felt the first cold fingers of doubt crawling up his spine. It was too quiet. Too easy. Maya Chen wasn't hiding, she was planning. All teams maintain vigilance. She's testing us. Testing us how? Mercer's voice crackled through the radio. There's nowhere she can go that we haven't covered. That's what worries me. 23 minutes in the first Marine went down. Private First Class Rodriguez was holding a corner position in Sector 4 when his radio went dead. No warning, no sound. Just silence where his voice should have been. Rodriguez, report. Briggs's voice was sharp. Rodriguez. Nothing. Bravo Team, check on Rodriguez, now. 2 Marines broke from their positions and moved toward Rodriguez's last known location. They found him sitting against a wall, his hands zip-tied behind his back, a piece of paper taped to his chest. The note read, 1 of 40. Your communications are predictable. Your positions are obvious. Try harder. Son of a bitch, Reeves's voice cracked with frustration. She took him without anyone hearing a thing. How? Vance demanded. There were 3 of us within 50 meters. Because she's better than us. Webb's quiet voice cut through the chatter. She's not playing our game. She's playing her own. Briggs stared at the tactical map, trying to understand what he was missing. Maya had taken a man from the center of their formation without triggering a single alarm. That wasn't just skill, that was something else entirely. All teams tighten formation. Nobody operates alone. Minimum 2-man elements from now on. The adjustment came too late. At the 31-minute mark, Maya's voice crackled across every radio frequency simultaneously. Staff Sergeant Briggs, your encryption is laughable. I've been listening to your tactical communication since minute 3. 40 Marines froze. Here's what I've learned. Maya continued, her voice calm and conversational. Your Alpha team leader scratches his nose before giving orders. Your Bravo team has a 3-second gap in their rotation every 45 seconds. Your Charlie team hasn't changed their patrol pattern once since the exercise began." "How is she doing this?" someone whispered. "She's not doing anything special," Briggs said slowly, the realization hitting him like ice water. "She's just paying attention. Something we forgot how to do." "Correct, Staff Sergeant." Maya's voice was almost approving. "Question for your men: if I can identify your patterns in 30 minutes, what could an enemy do with 30 days? The radio went silent. "New plan," Briggs said. "Everyone switch to backup frequencies. Randomize your patrol patterns. And for God's sake, stop being predictable." The next 17 minutes were chaos. Marines abandoned their training improvising, trying to be unpredictable. Some succeeded. Most didn't. The harder they tried to break their patterns, the more obvious their attempts became. Maya picked them apart like a surgeon dissecting a corpse. Corporal Williams went down at the 44-minute mark, found zip-tied in a supply closet he'd been certain was empty. The note on his chest read 2 of 40. Your random patterns follow predictable logic. Humans are terrible at true randomness. Sergeant Patterson was next taken from a position he'd chosen specifically because it broke protocol. His note said 3 of 40. Breaking patterns only works if you understand the new pattern you're creating. 2 more fell at the 52-minute mark, a paired team that had been watching each other's backs with perfect discipline. They never saw Maya coming. They never heard her. One moment they were professionals executing their training. The next moment they were casualties with matching notes that read 4 and 5 of 40. Mutual security is an illusion when neither person knows what to look for. "This is insane," Reeves growled into his radio. "We've got 40 trained Marines and she's picking us off like we're recruits on the first day of boot camp." "Because we're fighting her way," Webb said quietly. "What? She set the rules. She picked the battlefield. She chose the tactics. We're reacting to her instead of forcing her to react to us." Briggs heard something in the young Marine's voice that made him pause. "Webb, what are you thinking? She knows how Marines operate, right? She's studied us, trained against us. She can predict everything we're going to do because we do it the same way every time. So what if we stop being Marines? What if we start being something else?" The radio went quiet. For a long moment, nobody spoke. "Webb," Briggs' voice was careful. "What exactly are you proposing? Let me go dark, Sarge. Radio off. No pattern. No logic. I'm going to stop thinking like a hunter and start thinking like prey." "That's insane." "It's what she'd do." Webb's voice carried a certainty that surprised everyone, including himself. "She's not hunting us, Sarge. She's hurting us. Moving us where she wants us. Using our own training against us. So you want to stop being useful to her. Stop being where she expects. Stop moving in ways she can predict." Webb paused. "I'm going to disappear. And when she looks for me, I'll be looking back." Briggs closed his eyes. It was a terrible plan. It violated every principle of unit cohesion and coordinated movement. It would leave Webb completely alone against someone who had already demonstrated she could take Marines at will. It was also the first creative tactical thinking he'd heard all day. "Do it. Radio silent. We'll run distraction patterns to keep her focused on the main force." "Understood, Sarge. Webb going dark." The radio clicked off, and somewhere in the training facility, a 19-year-old ghost smiled. She'd been waiting for someone to adapt. The next 20 minutes were a massacre. Maya moved through the Marine formation like smoke through fingers. She appeared from shadows they'd checked, vanished into spaces they'd cleared, and left a trail of zip-tied professionals who would spend years wondering how they'd failed so completely. 6 of 40. 7. 8. 9. Each note contained a specific critique, not insults, not mockery, but clinical assessments of exactly where each Marine had failed and why. 10. Your breathing is too loud when you're nervous. 11. You telegraphed your movement by shifting weight to your lead foot. 12. You trusted technology over instinct. Your thermal signature betrayed you. Briggs watched his force crumble and felt something he hadn't experienced in 14 years of military service. Helplessness. Complete, total helplessness against an opponent who seemed to exist outside the rules of engagement. "She's not even using weapons," Mercer reported, his voice hollow. "She's taking us down with pressure points and joint locks. She could kill every one of us, and she's choosing not to." That's the point. Briggs understood now, the realization settling into his bones like cold truth. She's showing us mercy. She's teaching us. And we're too proud to learn. 15, 16, 17. By the 70-minute mark, Maya had neutralized nearly half the platoon without a single shot fired. The remaining Marines had clustered together in defensive positions, abandoning offense entirely hoping that numerical superiority would protect them from a threat they couldn't see, couldn't predict, couldn't understand. It didn't. 18 and 19 went down together, taken from behind, while their partners looked the wrong direction. 20 fell while calling for backup, the zip ties around his wrists clicking shut before his radio transmission finished. And then something changed. Maya's voice crackled across the frequency again, but this time something in her tone was different. "Staff Sergeant Briggs, I'm impressed. One of your Marines has gone off-grid. Webb, I assume. He's been invisible for the last 43 minutes. Briggs felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. "He's learning." "He is, which means this exercise just got interesting." A pause. 21 minutes remaining. I'm going to continue reducing your force while hunting your wild card. May the best operator win. The radio went silent. Briggs looked at the tactical map at the red markers showing every Marine who'd been neutralized at the shrinking circle of his remaining force. 20 men left against a ghost who'd already proven she could take them all. But somewhere out there, Marcus Webb was hunting too. Webb had spent the first 40 minutes doing nothing. He'd found a maintenance crawl space that wasn't on any map, wedged himself into a position that would be torture for anyone larger than his lean frame, and simply waited. He didn't move. He didn't breathe loudly. He became part of the building itself. It was he realized exactly what Maya had done at the beginning. She hadn't started hunting them immediately. She'd observed, learned, built a mental map of who they were and how they operated. So Webb watched. He watched through a ventilation grate as Maya passed within 3 feet of his position, moving with a fluid grace that barely disturbed the air. He memorized her movement patterns, the way she checked corners, the subtle rhythm of her breathing. She was good. Impossibly good. But she was still human. And humans had patterns. Even the ones who thought they didn't. At the 87-minute mark, Webb left his hiding spot. He didn't move toward where Maya had been. He moved toward where she would be. The logic was simple once he stopped thinking like a Marine. Maya wasn't random. She was efficient. She was working through their formation systematically, neutralizing threats while maintaining positions that gave her multiple escape routes. That meant there were places she would go and places she wouldn't. Webb positioned himself in a place she wouldn't expect anyone competent to be a dead end, with no tactical value, no cover, no concealment. It was such a terrible position that no trained operator would choose it, which meant Maya would never look there. He waited. 93 minutes in, he heard footsteps. Light, controlled, coming closer. Maya passed the entrance to his dead-end corridor without slowing. Why would she check it? There was nothing there worth finding. Webb counted to 3. Then he moved. He didn't try to fight her. He didn't try to subdue her. He'd seen what happened to people who tried that approach. Instead, he simply followed, matching her pace, staying in her blind spot, learning her rhythm. For 8 minutes, he shadowed the ghost. Maya took 2 more Marines during that time. Webb watched how she did it. The approach angles, the timing, the pressure points she targeted. He filed everything away, building a profile of her tactics, the same way she'd built profiles of theirs. Then she stopped. "You can come out now, Private Webb." Webb's heart seized. How he'd been perfect. He'd done everything right. "Your shadow fell across my peripheral vision 6 minutes ago. I've been letting you follow me to see what you'd do." Maya turned to face him. In the dim light, her green eyes were almost luminous. "Most people would have attacked by now. Why didn't you?" "Because I can't beat you in a fight." Webb's voice was steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "But I can learn from you. And what I learn, I can teach." Maya studied him for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. Not warmth exactly, but recognition. "How old are you, Webb?" 20, ma'am." "You remind me of someone." Her voice softened almost imperceptibly. "He used to say that the best operators aren't the ones who win every fight. They're the ones who know which fights to avoid." "Your mentor Morrison?" Maya's jaw tightened. "Yes. I'm sorry about what happened to him. I know our unit's intelligence." "Don't!" The word came out sharp enough to cut. "Don't apologize for something you didn't do. That's cheap. If you want to honor his memory, be better than the people who failed him." Webb nodded slowly. "Then teach me. Please." For a long moment, Maya said nothing. Then she reached into her vest and pulled out a set of zip ties. "Here's your first lesson." She handed them to him. "Sometimes surrendering is the smartest tactical decision. I'm giving you a choice, Private. You can let me zip tie you and this encounter ends with you as another casualty. Or you can take these back to your command post and report everything you've learned." "That's not much of a choice." "Every choice is significant." Maya's voice carried weight beyond her years. "The question is whether you have the wisdom to see it." Webb looked at the zip ties in his hands. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "What happens if I go back?" "Then you become the first Marine today who didn't fail. And maybe your unit survives this evaluation." Webb turned and walked away. He didn't run. He didn't look back. He carried the zip ties like they were made of gold, because in that moment they were worth more than gold. They were worth the future of 40 men who'd forgotten how to learn. Behind him, Maya Chen watched him go. "Not bad, kid," she whispered to herself. "Not bad at all." The command post fell silent when Webb walked in. Briggs looked at his youngest Marine, unbound, unharmed, carrying enemy equipment like a trophy. Something had changed in Webb's eyes. The nervous recruit who'd arrived that morning was gone. In his place stood someone who'd seen behind the curtain and survived. "Webb," Briggs's voice was careful. "Report." "She caught me, Sarge. Knew I was there the whole time. Said she let me follow her because she wanted to see what I'd do. And she let me go." Webb set the zip ties on the tactical table. "She said it was a choice. That surrendering was sometimes the smartest tactical decision." "So why didn't she zip tie you? Because I wasn't trying to win." Webb looked up, meeting his sergeant's eyes. "I was trying to learn, and she respected that." The room went quiet. 8 minutes left," Reeves said quietly. "We've lost 23 men. She's going to finish us." "Maybe." Briggs picked up the zip ties Webb had brought back. Or maybe we've been thinking about this all wrong. What do you mean? She's not trying to destroy us. She could have done that in the first 30 minutes. Briggs turned the ties over in his hands. She's trying to teach us. Every note she left, every tactical correction, every single thing she's done today, it's all been lessons. Lessons about what? About who we've become versus who we should be. Briggs set the ties down. The question isn't whether we can beat her. We can't. The question is whether we can prove we're worth saving. The final 8 minutes ticked away. Maya didn't take another Marine. Instead, she walked directly to the command post, passing through their remaining security like it didn't exist. She pushed open the door and stepped inside, finding Briggs sitting alone at the tactical table. She was drinking his coffee, reading his classified patrol reports, completely at ease in the heart of enemy territory. "You could have captured me," she said. "Webb had my position. He could have called it in." Would it have mattered? No. Maya set down the coffee cup. But it would have shown initiative. It would have shown you understood what this exercise was really about. And what is it about? Transformation. Maya's voice carried the weight of 8 months of grief and a lifetime of lessons learned in blood. Your unit has 3 critical failures. Your intelligence protocols are outdated. Your communication security is non-existent. And your leadership culture prioritizes ego over competence. Briggs didn't argue. He couldn't. These failures killed 47 personnel in the last 18 months, Staff Sergeant, including my mentor. Maya pulled a folder from her vest, thick, heavily classified, containing the documented evidence of a unit's systematic dysfunction. "I have the authority to end you. All of you. One signature, and Bravo Platoon becomes a footnote in Marine Corps history." Again, the folder landed on the table between them. "So end us." Briggs' voice was hollow. "If that's what we deserve, then do it. Don't drag it out. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. What matters is whether my men can become better than what I made them." Briggs looked up, and Maya saw something she hadn't expected in his eyes. Surrender. Not defeat, something different. Acceptance. "We're broken, Commander. I broke them. With my ego, my arrogance, my absolute certainty that Marines were superior to everyone else." His voice cracked. "Hawk Morrison died because I was too proud to double-check my intelligence. And tonight you showed me that my pride would have gotten more people killed." The silence that followed was absolute. "So break us down completely," Briggs continued. "Disband the unit if that's what it takes. But please give my men a chance to rebuild. They followed my lead because that's what Marines do. If someone has to be punished for what we've become, punish me. Just me." Maya studied him for a long moment. The arrogant sergeant who'd confronted her in the recreation center was gone. In his place sat a man who'd finally seen himself clearly. "You really mean that?" "Every word." Maya reached for the folder. She opened it slowly, deliberately, letting Briggs see the recommendation forms inside. The ones that would end careers. The ones that would scatter 40 families to the winds of bureaucratic consequence. Then she pulled out a different document. "This is a provisional approval for intensive retraining," she said quietly. 72 hours of joint operations integration with SEAL Team 5. Cultural reformation supervised by Naval Special Warfare Command. Quarterly evaluations for the next 2 years. Briggs stared at the document like it was written in a foreign language. "I'm not here to destroy you, Staff Sergeant. I'm here to rebuild you." Maya's voice carried the weight of hard-earned wisdom. Hawk would have wanted that. He believed in second chances. Why, after everything we did? Because tonight, Your youngest Marine showed me something worth saving." Maya stood up. "Webb didn't try to beat me. He tried to learn from me. And when I gave him a choice, he chose growth over glory." She walked toward the door. "Tomorrow morning, 0600 hours. We start over. All of us." She paused at the threshold. "But understand something, Staff Sergeant. This is your last chance. My mercy has limits. Hawk's memory has limits. Don't make me regret believing in your capacity to change." The door closed behind her. Briggs sat alone in the command post, holding a document that represented something he'd stopped believing in. Hope. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise over Camp Lejeune. And somewhere in the training facility, 40 Marines were about to learn that their education had only just begun. The first morning of retraining began with silence. 40 Marines stood in formation at 0600 hours, their eyes hollow from sleepless nights, their bodies aching from the previous day's humiliation. None of them spoke. None of them needed to. The weight of what they'd experienced pressed down on every shoulder like invisible armor made of shame. Maya Chen walked the line, slowly studying each face. She stopped in front of Reeves. "Corporal, how's the arm?" Reeves flinched at the directness. "Functional, ma'am." "Good. You'll need it." She moved on, pausing next advance. "Lance Corporal, I noticed you deleted the videos from your phone last night." Vance's face went pale. "Ma'am, Smart decision. The ones that were already uploaded will stay up, but you choosing to stop the spread tells me something." She held his gaze. "It tells me you're starting to understand consequences." She continued down the line until she reached Webb, standing at the end, with the quiet confidence of someone who'd earned his place through choice rather than conquest. "Private Webb." "Ma'am, you're going to be my assistant instructor for the next 72 hours. You've seen things the others haven't. Time to share what you learned." Webb's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I'm the youngest here. They won't." "They will." Maya's voice carried absolute certainty. "Because you earned it, and because I'm telling them to." She turned to address the full formation. "Yesterday I broke you. Today we rebuild. But understand something, I'm not here to make you comfortable. I'm here to make you capable. The process will be painful. Some of you will want to quit. Some of you will hate me before this is over." She paused. "That's fine. Hate me all you want. Just don't waste the lessons I'm about to give you." The first day was physical. Not the parade ground physical that Marines were accustomed to, the standardized push-ups and runs that built baseline fitness. This was something different, something surgical. Maya demonstrated close quarters techniques that none of them had ever seen in official training manuals. Pressure points that could disable without permanent damage. Joint manipulations that turned an opponent's strength into weakness. Movement patterns that made their standard combatives look like children wrestling. "The body has 206 bones," Maya said, flowing through a demonstration with Briggs that left the sergeant on his back in under 2 seconds. "It has over 600 muscles, and it has exactly 732 points where moderate pressure causes significant pain." She helped Briggs up without ceremony. "Your enemy knows some of these. I know all of them." By noon, every Marine had been put on the ground at least 3 times. By evening, the number was closer to 12. But something was changing in the way they moved, the way they approached problems, the way they looked at the young woman who was systematically dismantling everything they thought they knew. "Again," Maya ordered. Reeves squared off against her for the 15th time. His arm still ached from the recreation center, but he'd stopped protecting it, stopped favoring it, stopped letting old wounds dictate new movements. "You're compensating for your injury," Maya said. "That's predictable. Opponents will see it. use it against you. Then how do I fix it? Stop hiding it. Advertise it. Maya dropped into a fighting stance. Make them think your right arm is weaker than it is. Let them commit to attacking your apparent weakness. Then show them they were wrong. Reeves attacked. Maya deflected. But this time something different happened. Instead of hitting the ground immediately, Reeves recovered. He adjusted. He read Maya's counter and shifted his weight in a way that kept him upright for 2 additional exchanges. Then he was on his back again. But there was a smile on his face. Better? Maya said, offering her hand. Much better. Briggs watched from the sideline, his expression unreadable. He'd spent 14 years believing he understood combat. 14 years building a reputation on confidence and aggression and the kind of physicality that dominated every room he entered. In 12 hours, a 19-year-old had taught him that everything he knew was wrong. You're thinking too hard, Sergeant. Briggs turned. Webb had appeared beside him, moving with a quietness that the young Marine hadn't possessed before yesterday. How do you do that? Do what? Move without sound. You used to stomp around like everyone else. Webb shrugged. She taught me, in the training facility when I was following her. I watched how she placed her feet, how she distributed her weight. It's not magic, it's just attention. Just attention, Briggs repeated. That's what she says. The difference between her and us isn't physical. It's focus. She sees things we don't because we stopped looking. Webb paused. She says Marines are trained to act, not observe. That we're so busy trying to dominate situations that we miss the information that would let us succeed without fighting. Briggs was quiet for a long moment. I spent 14 years being the wrong kind of strong. You can spend the next 14 being the right kind. Webb met his sergeant's eyes without flinching. If you want to. Day 2 brought integration. 4 operators from SEAL Team 5 arrived at 0500 men who'd served with Hawk Morrison, who'd been briefed on Maya's mission, who understood exactly what was at stake. Lieutenant Commander James Callahan led them. At 38, he was everything Marines imagined SEALs to be. Quiet, competent, utterly devoid of the swagger that characterized Hollywood portrayals. He shook Briggs' hand with the grip of a professional meeting another professional. Staff Sergeant, Commander Chen tells me your unit is ready to learn. We're ready to try. That's all anyone can ask. Callahan looked at the assembled Marines. My men aren't here to show off. We're here to demonstrate what partnership looks like. The exercises today will require coordination between your teams and ours. Success will depend on communication trust and the willingness to check your egos at the door. The first joint exercise was a disaster. Marines and SEALs couldn't coordinate. The Marines kept trying to lead defaulting to the competitive mindset that had defined their training. The SEALs adapted around them, but the friction was obvious. Maya stopped the exercise after 17 minutes. What did you see? She asked the assembled teams. Silence. Nobody fine? I'll tell you. She pointed at Briggs. Your team advanced on the objective like you were trying to beat the SEALs to the finish line. You weren't supporting them. You were racing them. Old habits, Briggs admitted. Old habits get people killed. Maya's voice was sharp. This isn't competition. War doesn't care which branch reaches the objective first. War cares whether Americans come home alive. She turned to Callahan. Your assessment, the Marines have skills, Callahan said diplomatically. But they're fighting with us instead of alongside us. It's like they've been trained to see every other unit as a rival rather than an ally. Because they have been, Maya addressed the Marines directly. Your entire culture is built on being better than everyone else. Marines versus Army, Marines versus Navy, Marines versus Air Force. You've been told you're the best for so long that you've forgotten how to be part of a team that includes people who aren't Marines. The words landed like punches. "Reset," Maya ordered. "We're doing it again. And this time, Staff Sergeant, your only job is to support the SEAL advance. Not lead it, not compete with it. Support it." Briggs nodded slowly. Understood. The second attempt was better. Not good, but better. Marines held positions that created advantages for the SEAL operators. Communication improved. The rivalry didn't disappear, but it evolved into something more productive. By the fourth iteration, something clicked. Webb was the first to notice it. A Marine fire team moving in perfect synchronization with a SEAL element, covering each other's movements, communicating through hand signals, rather than words functioning as a single unit, rather than two separate forces. "There," Maya said, pointing at the coordinated movement. "That's what partnership looks like. Nobody's leading, nobody's following, they're just executing together." Reeves looked at the mixed unit with something approaching wonder. "I didn't think that was possible." "It's always been possible. You just had to want it badly enough." Maya checked her watch. "Reset for final iteration. This time I'm joining the opposition. Let's see if Marines and SEALs can take down a ghost when they actually work together." The final exercise of Day 2 lasted 47 minutes. Maya evaded capture for 32 of those minutes, but the difference from before was stark. She wasn't picking off individuals anymore. The combined force was covering each other too effectively, communicating too seamlessly. Every angle of approach was watched. Every blind spot was covered. At the 33-minute mark, Webb spotted her. "Contact Sector 7. The response was immediate, not from Marines or SEALs individually, but from both simultaneously. They moved as one organism, collapsing the space, cutting off escape routes, forcing Maya into increasingly limited options. She went down at minute 47, tackled by a coordinated effort from Reeves and a SEAL petty officer named Torres. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't pretty, but it was effective. "Time," Callahan called. "Target secured." Maya brushed dirt off her uniform as the combined team released her. There was something new in her expression. Not quite pride, but something close. 47 minutes, she said. "Yesterday, you couldn't touch me in 2 hours. Today, you caught me in under an hour." She looked at Briggs. "What changed?" "We stopped trying to win," Briggs said slowly. "We started trying to work together." "Exactly." Maya addressed both teams. "Individual excellence is worthless if it can't be integrated into a larger effort. The best operators I've ever known weren't the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who made everyone around them better." She paused, and something shifted in her voice. "Someone taught me that once, a long time ago." That night, Maya found herself at the memorial wall again. She hadn't planned to come here. Her feet had simply carried her to this place, to these names, to this silence. Hawk's name gleamed in the bronze like a question she still didn't know how to answer. "Are you proud of me?" she whispered. "Am I doing this right?" Footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. "Commander?" Briggs's voice was quiet, respectful. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not intruding." Maya gestured at the space beside her. "There's room for both of us." Briggs moved to stand next to her, his eyes finding Hawk's name immediately. "I've walked past this wall 1,000 times since I transferred here. Never stopped until 2 days ago." "Why not?" "Because stopping would mean acknowledging that the names were real, that they were people." His voice cracked slightly. "It's easier to think of casualties as statistics, numbers on a report, things that happen to other units, other missions, other people's friends. Until they're your fault." Briggs flinched. "Yeah, Until then. They stood in silence for a long moment, two people from different worlds joined by a shared weight of responsibility and grief. "Tell me about him," Briggs said finally. "Not the classified stuff, just who he was." Maya's breath caught. Nobody had asked her that. Not the admirals who'd debriefed her after Yemen, not the counselors who'd tried to help her process the loss, not even the SEAL team members who'd served beside Hawk for years. Nobody had asked who he was, just what he'd done. "He was terrible at cooking," she said, and the words surprised her with their softness. "Used to burn water," he said. "Made these awful protein shakes that tasted like wet cardboard and chalk, but he'd drink them every morning with this expression like he was enjoying fine wine." Briggs didn't interrupt, just listened. "He found me at a shooting competition when I was 17. I'd just broken a national record, and everyone wanted to talk about my technique, my training, my future in competitive shooting." Maya's voice caught. "Hawk asked me what I was afraid of." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I was afraid of being ordinary, of having this gift and wasting it on paper targets while people were dying in places I couldn't pronounce." She wiped at her eyes. "He said he knew a place where I could make a difference, where my gift could save lives instead of winning trophies." "And you said yes." "I said yes before he finished the sentence." Maya laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My parents thought I was insane. My coaches thought I was throwing away a career. But Hawk saw something in me that nobody else did. He saw a warrior waiting to be born. He was right." "Was he?" Maya turned to face Briggs. "Because sometimes I wonder. I've done things, Staff Sergeant. Things that keep me awake at night. Things that made me question whether saving some lives justifies taking others. You saved those hostages in Yemen. I also killed a nurse who volunteered her time to help strangers in a war zone. Her name was Rachel Morrison. She was 24 years old. She had a fiancé waiting for her in Ohio." Maya's voice was barely audible now. "I see her face every time I close my eyes." Briggs was quiet for a long moment. "In my first deployment," he said finally, "I called in an airstrike on a building we were told was an insurgent command center. Turned out to be a school. 6 children died because I trusted intelligence. I should have verified." The confession hung in the darkness between them. "I told myself it wasn't my fault. The intel was wrong. The fog of war. Collateral damage happens." His voice broke. "But I knew. Somewhere deep down I knew I should have checked. Should have waited. Should have been more careful." "So you stopped being careful." Briggs looked at her sharply. "What? You stopped trusting anyone's intelligence, including your own. You built walls. You convinced yourself that confidence was the same as competence, that never admitting doubt meant never being responsible for mistakes." Maya's eyes were gentle despite her words. "It's a common response to trauma. Protection through aggression." "How do you know that?" "Because I did the same thing." Maya turned back to Hawk's name. "After he died, I shut down. Stopped trusting Marine intelligence entirely. Stopped trusting anyone outside my immediate team. I came here ready to destroy your unit because destroying you felt safer than admitting I couldn't save him." "So why didn't you?" "Because of Webb." Maya's voice softened. "He reminded me that people can change, that second chances mean something, that Hawk would have wanted me to build bridges, not burn them." Briggs was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, stripped of pretense, just a man trying to understand his own failures. "Can we fix this? Really fix it? Not just pass your evaluation, but actually become what we should have been all along?" "I don't know." Maya's honesty was brutal. "But I know you can try. And trying is more than most people ever manage." She reached out and touched Hawk's name one final time. "He believed in second chances, Staff Sergeant. He gave me one when I was 17 years old and didn't know who I was supposed to be. She looked at Briggs. I'm offering the same thing to you. Don't waste it. Day 3 was the final test. Maya briefed them at 0500, her expression giving nothing away. Today you hunt me again. Same rules as before. 2 hours. 40 personnel. But this time, you'll be working with the SEAL fire team as a fully integrated force. What's different? Briggs asked. You are. Maya's voice carried weight. Or you should be. The last 72 hours have either changed you or they haven't. This exercise will tell me which. The teams deployed at 0530. But something had shifted. The Marines didn't split into competitive elements. They didn't race ahead or hold back. They moved with the SEALs as partners, sharing information, covering each other, functioning as a single organism, rather than rival species. First contact came at 11 minutes. Webb spotted her shadow in a maintenance corridor. He signaled Torres, who signaled Reeves, who coordinated with Callahan. The response was seamless, not 40 individuals responding, but one unit adapting to new information. Maya evaded the first approach, and the second. But her escape routes were narrowing. Every position she'd used before was covered. Every pattern she'd established was anticipated. At minute 23, she made her mistake. She'd expected them to chase. That's what Marines did. That's what the old Bravo platoon would have done. Instead, they waited. They let her run. They predicted where she'd go, rather than following where she'd been. Webb's team was waiting in a corridor she'd planned to use as an escape route. Torres's element blocked the secondary exit. Briggs himself stood at the final choke point, arms crossed, expression calm. Surrender, he asked. Maya looked around at the forces surrounding her. 44 personnel, Marine and SEAL, operating as one unit. Not a single gap in their coverage. Not a single mistake in their positioning. She smiled. 47 minutes, she said. You just cut 6 minutes off yesterday's time, and you did it without me teaching you anything new. She raised her hands in surrender. That's called growth, Staff Sergeant. The debrief happened in the same recreation center where everything had started. General Stone was there, Colonel Davis, Major Vance, the entire chain of command that would determine Bravo platoon's fate. Maya stood before them with her assessment folder open. 72 hours ago, this unit was a liability, arrogant, undisciplined, institutionally incapable of cooperation with joint forces. She paused. That unit no longer exists. Stone leaned forward. Your recommendation. Full operational certification pending quarterly review. Integration with SEAL Team 5 for joint exercises continuing through the next calendar year. Leadership Mentorship Program for Staff Sergeant Briggs and his senior NCOs. That's not dissolution, Davis said slowly. No, sir, it's not. Maya closed her folder. What I witnessed over the last 3 days was something rare, a unit that learned from failure instead of being destroyed by it. That's worth preserving. She looked at Briggs. Staff Sergeant, your unit killed my mentor through negligence. You also gave me the chance to honor his memory by building something better from the wreckage. Her voice caught slightly. Hawk would have wanted that. Second chances. Bridges instead of walls. Briggs stood at attention, his eyes bright. Ma'am, we won't waste this. See that you don't. Maya gathered her things. Because I will be back in 3 months. And if I find that you've reverted to old patterns, my recommendation will change. Permanently. The door closed behind her. The recreation center was silent. Then Reeves started laughing. It was the exhausted, disbelieving laughter of a man who'd been certain he was finished and discovered he still had a future. We survived, he said. We actually survived. No. Briggs's voice was quiet but firm. We just started. The real work begins tomorrow. He looked around at his men. Changed men, humbled men, men who finally understood that strength wasn't about dominance. We've got 3 months to prove we deserve what she's given us. 3 months to become the unit we should have been all along. He paused. Anyone who's not ready for that can transfer out tonight. No questions asked. Nobody moved. Good. Briggs allowed himself a small smile. Then let's get to work. Outside, Maya Chen walked toward her transport. Her phone buzzed with new orders. Another base, another broken unit, another chance to honor Hawk's memory by building something better. She paused at the gate and looked back at Camp Lejeune. Rest easy, Hawk, she whispered. They're going to be okay. Then she was gone, carried toward the next mission by the same calling that had driven her since she was 17 years old. The calling to make warriors out of the willing, and second chances out of ashes. 3 months changed everything. The quarterly review arrived on a Tuesday morning, and Briggs stood before his platoon with the results in his hands. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something he hadn't felt in 14 years of military service. Hope. 0 deficiencies, he read aloud, his voice catching on the words. Joint Operations Integration Rating exceptional. Command Climate Survey significantly improved. Recommendation Full Operational Certification confirmed. The recreation center erupted. Marines who 3 months ago had been humiliated beyond recognition were now embracing, shouting, celebrating a victory that meant more than any combat ribbon ever could. They had survived. More than that, they had transformed. Reeves grabbed Webb in a bear hug that lifted the younger Marine off his feet. We did it. We actually did it. Put me down, you idiot! But Webb was laughing, his face split by a grin that made him look even younger than his 20 years. You're going to break my ribs! Vance was already on his phone calling his wife with the news. His voice cracked as he told her that his career wasn't over, that the kids wouldn't have to change schools, that everything they'd worked for hadn't been destroyed by one terrible night in a recreation center. Briggs watched his men celebrate and felt something shift inside his chest. The weight he'd been carrying since Syria, since the intelligence failure, since Hawk Morrison's death, since the moment he'd realized his arrogance had cost lives, didn't disappear. It never would. But it changed, became something he could carry instead of something that carried him. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Told you they were worth saving. Ghost Eye Briggs smiled and typed back, "Thank you. For everything." The response came immediately. "Don't thank me yet. Deployment orders are coming. Show me what you've learned." 2 weeks later, those orders arrived. Syria. Joint operation with SEAL Team 5. High-value target extraction in hostile territory. The kind of mission that would have terrified the old Bravo platoon, not because of the enemy, but because of the collaboration it required. Now it felt like the opportunity they'd been preparing for. Briggs briefed his men with a confidence he hadn't possessed 3 months ago. Not the old confidence, the arrogant certainty that Marines were superior to everyone else. This was something different. Earned confidence. The kind that came from knowing exactly what you were capable of because you'd tested those limits and pushed past them. We're operating as support element for SEAL Fire Team Viper, he explained. Our job is to secure the extraction route and provide overwatch during the target acquisition phase. We are not competing with the SEALs. We are not trying to prove anything. We are doing our job and coming home alive. What about the intelligence package? Reeves asked. The question would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. Questioning the intel was questioning authority, and the old Bravo platoon didn't question authority. We've verified it through 3 independent sources. Briggs met his corporal's eyes. I personally reviewed the assessment with Commander Chen before she approved our participation. If there are gaps, we'll adapt. That's what we do now. Webb raised his hand. Sarge, I've been studying the terrain. There's a secondary approach that isn't in the primary plan. If things go sideways, show me. Webb pulled up his tablet and walked Briggs through an alternative route he'd identified during his own review of the operational area. It was unconventional. It broke standard doctrine. It was exactly the kind of adaptive thinking Maya had spent 72 hours drilling into their heads. Good work. Briggs looked at his youngest Marine with something approaching pride. We'll keep this in reserve. If the primary plan fails, you're on point. Webb nodded, his face serious but steady. He wasn't the nervous recruit who'd stood silent while his seniors harassed a woman in a recreation center. He was an operator now. A professional. They all were. The insertion went smoothly. Briggs led his element through the darkness with the quiet efficiency that 3 months of intensive training had instilled. No wasted movement, no unnecessary communication. Just professionals doing their job in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. SEAL Team Viper was already in position when the Marines arrived. Lieutenant Commander Callahan acknowledged Briggs with a nod, the kind of respect that could only exist between equals. Good to see you, Staff Sergeant. Likewise, sir. My element is in position. We've got your extraction covered. I heard you've been putting in work since Commander Chen's evaluation. We had good teachers. Callahan smiled slightly. She said you'd say that. Also said to watch your 6. She's got a feeling about this one. The words sent a chill down Briggs's spine. Maya Chen's feelings weren't superstition. They were pattern recognition honed by years of operating in environments where intuition meant survival. Tell your men to stay sharp, Callahan continued. We move in 15. The first sign of trouble came at the 12-minute mark. Webb's voice crackled through the comm tight with controlled urgency. Sarge, I've got movement on the secondary approach. Multiple signatures. They're not supposed to be there. Briggs' blood went cold. The intelligence said the secondary approach was clear. The intelligence said the only hostiles were concentrated around the primary target. The intelligence was wrong. For one terrible moment he was back in Syria, back in the moment when bad intel had killed 3 SEALs, back in the darkness of his own failure. Then training took over. All elements be advised, we have unconfirmed hostile activity on secondary approach. Viper recommend you abort primary entry and regroup at Rally Point Charlie. Callahan's response was immediate. Negative. We're already committed. Can you contain the secondary threat? Briggs looked at his men. The old Bravo platoon would have panicked, would have defaulted to aggression, would have made mistakes that got people killed. These weren't those Marines anymore. Webb, take your fire team and assess the secondary threat. Reeves, shift your element to provide cover. Vance, maintain overwatch on primary. Nobody engages without my authorization. Copy that, Sarge. His men moved like water fluid, adaptable, responding to changing circumstances instead of clinging to plans that no longer applied. Maya's voice echoed in his memory. The best operators aren't the ones who win every fight. They're the ones who know which fights to avoid. Webb's assessment came through 60 seconds later. Sarge, it's worse than we thought. I count 8 hostiles, maybe 10. They're setting up an ambush position on Viper's extraction route. If the SEALs come out the way they planned, they're walking into a kill zone. The situation crystallized with terrible clarity. The SEALs were committed to their primary mission. The intelligence failure had created a threat they didn't know existed. And 40 Marines were the only thing standing between their allies and disaster. It was Somalia all over again. Except this time, Briggs had a chance to write a different ending. Webb, can you guide Viper through your alternative route? Yes, sir. But they'll have to trust me. And they'll have to move fast. Callahan. Briggs keyed his comm to the SEAL frequency. We've got a problem. Your extraction route is compromised. My man has an alternative, but you'll need to follow his lead. Silence stretched for 3 agonizing seconds. Your man being the private who impressed Commander Chen. That's the one. Another pause. Then, we'll follow his lead. Get us home, Marines. What happened next would be studied at Quantico for years to come. Webb guided SEAL Team Viper through terrain that wasn't on any map, using an approach that no formal training had ever taught. He anticipated enemy movement, identified cover positions, and coordinated with Marine fire teams to create safe corridors through the chaos. The hostiles realized too late that their ambush had been outmaneuvered. By the time they repositioned, the combined Marine SEAL element was already past the kill zone, moving toward extraction with the high-value target secured. But the enemy wasn't done. At the extraction point, everything went wrong at once. RPG fire erupted from positions they'd thought were clear. Briggs felt the concussion wave of an explosion that threw him off his feet and sent his helmet spinning into the darkness. Around him, Marines were returning fire, covering the SEALs, doing everything they'd trained to do. Then he heard the words that stopped his heart. Man down, Callahan's hit. Briggs was moving before his conscious mind registered the decision. He found the SEAL commander crumpled behind a vehicle, blood pooling beneath him, his team desperately trying to provide cover while applying pressure to a wound that looked fatal. How bad? Briggs shouted over the gunfire. Bad. The SEAL medic's voice was tight. Femoral artery. He's got maybe 3 minutes. 3 minutes. In a combat zone with active enemy fire and an extraction helicopter that was still 2 minutes out. The math didn't work. The situation was impossible. Briggs thought of Hawk Morrison dying in a doorway in this same country. Thought of the intelligence failure that had killed him. Thought of Maya Chen standing at a memorial wall asking the dead for forgiveness. He thought of second chances. Webb. Briggs grabbed his youngest Marine. I need suppressive fire on my signal. Everything you've got. Create a corridor to the extraction point. Sarge, that's suicide. You'll be completely exposed. Then don't miss. Briggs lifted Callahan onto his shoulders in a fireman's carry. The SEAL commander groaned, his eyes flickering open. What are you doing? Callahan's voice was barely audible. Returning the favor. Briggs met his eyes. Your commander saved my unit. I'm saving you. You'll die. Then I die doing something that matters. Briggs looked at Webb. On my signal. Make it count. He ran. The next 47 seconds were the longest of Connor Briggs' life. Bullets cracked past his head. Explosions threw debris that stung his face and arms. Behind him, Webb's fire team was unleashing everything they had, creating a wall of suppression that kept the enemy's heads down just long enough. The helicopter touched down as Briggs reached the extraction point. SEALs and Marines piled in together, dragging Callahan aboard the medic, already working to save a life that hung by threads. Go, go, go. The helicopter lifted off into the Syrian night, carrying 44 Americans toward safety. Behind them, the compound burned. They had done it. Against impossible odds, with bad intelligence, facing an enemy they hadn't planned for, they had adapted, improvised, and brought everyone home alive. James Callahan survived. The surgery took 11 hours. The recovery would take months. But he survived, and when he woke in a military hospital in Germany, the first face he saw was Connor Briggs. You carried me, Callahan said, his voice rough from the breathing tube. Under fire. You carried me. You would have done the same. Maybe. Callahan's eyes were wet. But I didn't have to. You did. He reached out and gripped Briggs's hand with surprising strength. Tell Commander Chen. Tell her she was right about you. Tell her yourself. She's on her way. Maya arrived that evening. She walked into the hospital room without ceremony, her face showing the exhaustion of a red-eye flight from wherever her latest evaluation had taken her. But her eyes were bright when she saw Callahan sitting up alive, recovering. You look terrible, she said. You look like you haven't slept in 3 days. 4, actually. Maya sat in the chair beside his bed. Heard you had some excitement. Heard your Marines saved my life. Maya's eyes found Briggs standing quietly by the window. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement, respect. The kind of understanding that only came from shared experience of the worst and best humanity had to offer. They're not my Marines anymore, she said softly. They're their own. That's the whole point. The debrief happened a week later. General Stone presided, his expression giving nothing away as he listened to the after-action reports. The intelligence failure, the adaptive response, the coordinated Marine SEAL extraction that had saved lives in exactly the scenario where lives had been lost a year before. When the reports were finished, Stone turned to Maya. Your assessment, Commander. Maya stood. Sir, 1 year ago, a joint operation in this same theater resulted in 3 SEAL casualties due to intelligence failures and coordination breakdowns. The Marines involved showed competence, but were limited by institutional cultures that prioritized branch rivalry over operational effectiveness. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. This operation faced similar challenges. The intelligence was compromised. The extraction route was ambushed. By every standard measure, it should have failed the same way. Her voice strengthened. It didn't, because the Marines involved had learned to adapt, to communicate, to see their SEAL partners as allies rather than rivals. She looked at Briggs. Staff Sergeant Briggs carried a wounded SEAL commander through active fire for 47 seconds. Private First Class Webb developed and executed an alternative extraction plan that no formal training had prepared him for. Corporal Reeves coordinated fire support that created survival corridors through impossible conditions. Your recommendation? Stone asked. Full commendation for all personnel involved, integration of the Hayes Protocol into standard training at basic school and officer candidate school, and formal recognition that inter-service cooperation isn't just possible, it's essential. Stone nodded slowly. And what about you, Commander? What's your next assignment? Maya's smile was tired, but genuine. There's always another broken unit, sir. Another culture that needs transforming. Another group of professionals who've forgotten how to learn. You can't save everyone. No. Maya's voice was quiet. But I can try. That's what Hawk would have wanted. And the memorial ceremony happened on a Sunday. Camp Lejeune's bronze wall had a new addition, not a name, but a plaque. The Hayes Protocol. In memory of Staff Sergeant Derek Morrison, who taught us that the best warriors don't just win battles, they create other warriors. Maya stood before the wall with Briggs beside her. Behind them, 40 Marines and 4 SEALs formed a silent honor guard. Webb was there. Reeves, Vance. Even Callahan, still recovering but determined to be present. He would have hated this, Maya said quietly. The ceremony, the attention. He always said medals were just shiny objects that looked better on walls than on chests. But he would have loved what it represents, Briggs offered. Maybe. Maya traced the letters of Hawk's name with her finger. He believed in second chances, believed that people could change if someone gave them the opportunity. He gave me that chance when I was 17 years old. She turned to face the assembled group. 1 year ago, I came to this base ready to destroy everything you'd built. I blamed you for Hawk's death. I wanted you to pay. Her voice caught. I was wrong. Blame is easy. Change is hard. And you chose change. She looked at Webb. You taught me that young doesn't mean incapable. That questioning assumptions is how we grow. At Reeves. You taught me that aggression can become protection when it's pointed in the right direction. At Briggs. You taught me that leaders can learn, that 14 years of mistakes don't have to define the next 14 years. Maya stepped back from the wall. The Hayes Protocol isn't about me. It's about all of us. It's about the idea that military effectiveness comes from cooperation, not competition. That strength means making others stronger. That the best measure of a warrior isn't how many enemies they've defeated, but how many allies they've created. She stood at attention. Staff Sergeant Derek Morrison gave his life because he believed Americans could be better. Today we honor that belief. Tomorrow we spread it. The ceremony ended, but something else began. Over the following months, the Hayes Protocol spread through the military like wildfire. Units that had operated in isolation for decades began training together. Intelligence sharing improved. The cultural barriers that had cost countless lives started slowly to crumble. Maya received orders that took her from base to base, broken unit to broken unit. Each assignment was different, each transformation unique. But the core message remained the same. Learn from failure. Adapt. Grow. Build bridges instead of walls. Webb was promoted to sergeant within 2 years. He now teaches adaptive tactics at Quantico, sharing the lessons he learned from a 19-year-old SEAL sniper who saw something in him that nobody else could see. Reeves completed SEAL selection on his 3rd attempt. He serves with Team 5, now carrying Hawk Morrison's legacy into every operation. Briggs retired after 20 years, but he didn't stop serving. He runs a non-profit that helps veterans struggling with the weight of their decisions find paths toward healing. His office wall carries a single photograph Maya Chen standing at a memorial wall, touching the name of a man who changed everything. And Maya herself. 3 years after that night in the recreation center, she received a new assignment. Another base. Another toxic unit. Another chance to honor Hawk's memory. She walked through the doors without rank insignia, her auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like a college student who'd wandered into the wrong building. A corporal approached her immediately, his eyes carrying the familiar mixture of entitlement and aggression that she'd seen so many times before. "Hey, sweetheart. You lost..." Maya Chen smiled. And somewhere she knew Hawk was smiling too. Because the best warriors don't just win battles. They create more warriors. They turn failure into wisdom, arrogance, into humility, enemies into allies. They leave every place stronger than they found it. That is the power of second chances. That is the meaning of legacy. That is what happens when someone believes in you before you believe in yourself. Connor Briggs learned that lesson in a recreation center. Marcus Webb learned it in a training facility. James Callahan learned it in a helicopter flying out of hell. And Maya Chen learned it from a man who saw a 17-year-old girl with a gift for shooting and chose to show her what that gift could become. The cycle continues. The lessons spread. The transformation never ends. Because true strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising stronger every single time.